Two guys were at an all-night restaurant having coffee and talking. It may have been a Denny's, but I'm not positive. And one of them said, "I've got this new neat notion of just what being civilized actually is." And his friend looked up with some interest, so he continued, "It's like taking the idea of survival too seriously." And his buddy stopped him mid-sip and replied, "But how in the world can you take the idea of survival too seriously?" And the first guy said, "Yeah, I know. That's what makes it so neat." One man suddenly shouted, "If you think that minimum wage security guards are something, just wait till you get a load of consciousness." The poor hate the rich, the weak hate each other, and the dumb hate themselves if they're intelligent enough to even realize it. A symbolic saga from the sea. While hunting for large whale-like information, one man lost a mental leg in the struggle and now thinks with a limp. The Philistines always see power as a matter of wealth, while artists perceive it in terms of intelligence. The Philistines don't care much for artists. From our big blue book of alternative myths. As per one version, God did not drive Adam and Eve from the garden as unruly bipeds, but rather folded them up into paper airplanes and sailed them out. A viewer writes, "Dear sir, I would appreciate if you would leave me out of your questionable creation stories." And on the back of the envelope, his wife added that, truth is, he'd just soon been left out of creation itself. At the first annual Alternative Counting Society's banquet and awards dinner, the opening speaker set the tone for the evening by explaining, "Statistics don't mean shit, except to shitheads." Money is to actual survival goods as respect is to fear, charity is to pack binding, and romance is to a post-screwing cigarette. There is yet another way in which a more alert man has more fun than everyone else. While the ordinary have only entertainment, he has two forms thereof, the temporary and the real. As they sat down with their strings at the musing pond one warm afternoon, a boy asked his father just what would happen to a knight if he did ever actually complete his quest. And the old man replied, more or less, "Well, I guess that after that he'd either have to become a health nut or a world-class hypochondriac." Definition: civilization. By fleas. Oh, all right then. Elephants with flea brains ruled by fleas. Professor, why do animals so lend themselves to mortal similes and comparisons to man? And the learned one replied, moo, bah, even. Political theory update. Dead. Seriousness, the opiate of the masses. The opiate of the masses. The fearful, the confused, the stupid. The history of warfare up till now. The battle for men's minds succeeded that for their behinds. If they dance and the artists begin leading the Philistines get fidgety, on edge, and tend to want to leave. Intellectual, urbanized survival. If you don't know what to eat, steal. If you don't know where to go, run. If you don't know what to think, quote. One man summed it up simply. The past sucks. My past, your past, all past, the past. And over his shoulder as he left, he said, and if the past doesn't like it, let it sue me. Long before there were even such words as physicist, mathematician, and mystics were out there searching for the theory of everything. "Tell me, old man," said the boy, "what is the grandest lie being told on this planet?" "That our self-image is established by others." In the bio-survival world, nothing is prohibited. In the neural post-survival, everything is permitted. Yet another view of why Philistines hate art and life. To help keep his mouth shut, one man secretly adopted the approach of, "Don't talk about the pitiful." Just for fun, assuming that he was able to be faithful to his idea, would you care to speculate on how hard it would be to get him to tell you what kind of guy he is? While haphazardly watching a monitor, a man in a guard's uniform suddenly thought, "I don't have sensations. Sensations are me." A sailor's never home, a soldier's never at peace, a knight's quest never at end. This sort of thing is a paradigmatic example of talking about something while actually talking about something else, because of the fact that you can't actually talk about what you're wanting to. One day, while sitting around talking, the spirit of death, well, actually, he was just death, but he thinks that calling himself the spirit of death makes him sound more impressive. Well, anyhow, the spirit of death said to his polar-based counterpart, "Boy, these humans, if they didn't have death to fret about, they'd start worrying over life." The tribal leader, one day in a private meeting, said to some of the village elders, "A man is responsible for who his children turn out to be in the same way he was his parents." Put in a more colloquial context, one local man flatly states, "Never let a guy named Bubba, paint the ceiling of your church, even if his last name is Bakatarati or some crap." Entertainment. Neural activity beyond the bio-survival level. Enlightenment. Neural activity beyond the entertainment level. Definition. Newly converted Philistine. An artist who's received an inheritance. "Old man," asked the lad, "what is this world's sorriest sight?" "A neural creature regressing," he replied. One city celeb's personal theme song is, "I may be wrong, but I think I'm marvelous, but I'm never wrong, so how can I tell?" He cautiously solicits your opinion in the matter. Another distinction between psychology and the mythical quest is that psychology's focus is on the ill and malfunctioning, while the quest is interested in only the well and the super well. Further note, those actively on the quest become the quest and are thus themselves only interested in their own well and super well facets. Or, more informally put, as the doctor told his patient, feeling bad doesn't really require much. Just being alive will do it. Ordinary consciousness is kind of like an underemployed watchdog. There is ultimately one thing that even the world's most enlightened man can never force you to do, and that is to give up being unnecessarily serious. There is nothing more serious than survival, and nothing less so than entertainment. One man says that now he too is toiling diligently in the area of artificial intelligence. But in his case, it's for personal use in his own mind. From a passing car, a voice shouted out, "Only dopes quote." And a lad asked his father, Did he mean only dopey, ignorant people, quote, or that only people on dope, quote? And as they waited for the light to change, the elder scratched his chin and replied, well, how about this? Why would dopey people need to get on dope? No. And as traffic stopped, they took a left on Puzzling Boulevard. The mystical knight's quest goes from discovering lakes to discovering water therein, to discovering droplets in the water, to discovering molecules in the droplets, to discovering atoms in the molecules, to discovering quarks in the atoms, to discovering new lakes. Make no mistake about it. In the normal collective world, the Philistines are supposed to be in charge. Believe me, it's better that way. In the wondrous world of cats, goo, and security guards, victory claim is victory achieved. Speak to me, old man, said the lad, and describe to me this life's most captious form of imprisonment. Word-forged shackles. One earth creature with hair of indeterminable age, but at least middle, hummed to himself as he strode along and bummed with himself. I'm so happy I could spit, I'm so happy I could pee, any happier not even be happy being me. Yeah. And dear friends, that kind of potential happiness, as your old Uncle Elmore used to say, is serious doo-doo. Yeah. The ordinary find occurrences of increased consciousness inexplicable in that they try and describe them in terms of spatial displacement, whereas they were temporally so. At the intellect's routine level of operation, even facts, be they apparently real and valid or illusionary and spurious, even facts are boring. Which is why both scientists and priests tend to be Philistines. And now for your further sulking enjoyment, this sort of stuff explained again. Entertainment for the elite. Urbanized artistic values necessarily updated. In the city, selling out is survival. A certain father, in the attempt to stretch his son's thinking capacities, one day said to him, even should we accept the collective psychological model of man, you must understand that a more perceptive man still wouldn't allow himself to have a subconscious. Some of one guy's best thoughts made him call them protein. One man swears that he has really about had it with local reality. He says that every time he calls for the bomb squad, they send over a team to clean out his septic tank. A farmer and his mule, having a beer at the roadhouse just outside the city, offers this description of collectively acceptable art. Legalized plagiarism, permissible cannibalism, legitimate incest, and harmless vomit. The mayor's unemployed half-brother had a further comment in this area. Quoting now, money and art have two things in common. Neither one of them means shit. From Scaramouche's scrapbook, this definition: humor, a mystic's hors d'oeuvres. Test yourself how to be absolutely certain that you are either dumb, stupid, ignorant, too earnest, too squinty-eyed, too untalented, far too civilized and jittery. How? I'll tell you how. You still believe that all important news must be either bad or serious. As her son grew ever more involved in daily arm wrestling with local conditions, a mother finally took him aside and said to him, "You've by now no doubt heard the term pussy whipped, and probably puzzled first over the actual need for such a meaningless term, and secondly, what does it actually represent in a meaningful metaphorical sense? So I'll tell you. The term is an attempt to distract an individual man from the collective fact that civilization will whip us all. The difference between friends and the academic process is that friends don't quote each other. Birds are cats expressing how it feels to be a cat and be aware of it. A knowing man does not, the collective, kick around when around the collective. Or put perhaps a bit more comfortably, real artists don't waste time talking about Philistines with Philistines. More important city definitions. Fame. Potty training for adults. The last word on conspiracies for the day. Consciousness has no secrets. One man said, "My house is falling down, but I don't care. The basement's dry, and I only go there periodically to check on my foundations." Another health report from another reality. And now, another episode of How Men Go Astray. They began to take the meanings of words more seriously than their sound. And now, my brethren, go forth and go astray no more, y'all. I ask of you further, O one, what is presently the most distracting misstep made a man study of himself psychologically? Either the belief that cats can truly become birds, or that there is some unfathomable chasm between the two. The downhill sled ride of aging actually affords two possibilities. One is the dulling of the survival runner, the other the sharpening of the entertaining creative one. The older you get, the smarter you have to get, or else you just get older. The difference between individual and collective history. The nervous system grows in man, but few men grow the nervous system in them. Okay, an extended remapping of the area. Philistines defined. Those with an inherent aversion to change, enlightening entertainment, tutoring for security guards, and the discovery of new bodies of water. According to the legend on one world, consciousness has a middle name, and it is the terrifying initials PT. Now time for some combination crime and stupidity news. One man says he ain't being a patsy for nobody, including himself. On the damp and dreary morning when the knight was to commence his quest, it could have just as well been bright and cheery, but in this particular instance, it just happened to be damp and dreary. He cinched tight his armory, sheathed his sword, then said to his trusty steed, "If I should fall in battle, and you return here alone, and any ask about me, just say that I said, screw 'em, as I happily embraced my fate." And definitions, more conclusive, more complex. Mystic. He amongst the collective who has a non-negotiable center of gravity. A more conscious mystic. He who has no common center. He who has no common based center. Thank you. And one citizen sort of snickers at the whole affair, saying, the only reason men call it their eye is that it's what they use to scan the monitors. And the smiling knight repeats, screw 'em, and pass the hors d'oeuvres. Seeing as how there were a string of items tonight having to do with two of our most popular teams, the artistes and the Philistines. How about in the city, selling out is surviving? I will assume, since we won't ask for a show of hands, at least we inadvertently bring out in stark relief any Philistines in the crowd. We will not ask who is unfamiliar with the term selling out. I'll just right quick. I'll cover it for you as though we had some children in the audience. But most of you should know that is amongst people with any claim, any interest in creativity, that is probably the kick in the groin. I mean, that is the supreme insult, as you should all know. Musician, you see a guy, you hadn't seen him in 10 years, and he was really trying to amount to something. You suddenly walk in, I'm just using archetypical, classical examples. You walk in a Holiday Inn, it's a nice real cover band with zebra skin jackets on, and there's the guy. And later you say, God, you were writing some neat stuff back the last time I saw you. Talk about sell out, or a guy who was a painter. Nice kind of guy, plenty of drugs, always hungry, having to live off. What? That just reminded me of a little joke. Oh, never mind. That's how you tell a drummer, but we won't go into that. But this guy was a painter. He was always hungry, and his car wouldn't run, all that. And then you run across him 10 years later, and he looks all right, and you say, well, what happened? You start selling paintings? Well, nah. I'm working in the art department at an ad agency. You go, God, sell out. So you all understand that. That is and you can surely understand from an ordinary street level view, collective humanity, that does, amongst them, pack some potency. Sold out. But now let us leave the relatively meaningless world of music and art and advertising. See, this says, in the city, selling out is survival. Well, let's jump back to the example for a second to make sure that we can walk from the real meaningless world into the important symbolic one. My fictional musician, my painter who is now in the graphics department of some suit and tie ad agency, they could say in their own defense, quite rightly so at that level, they'd say, well, hey, I don't like this job, and this stuff is nothing but dreck that we're putting out. I hate playing this kind of music. But hey, I had to live. I'm 40 years old now. I couldn't keep that up forever. Give me a break. I had to survive. But this, as I assume that you would already guess, is in no way not only a condemnation, but it's not even a attempt to salvage ordinary people. I'm talking about something else now in the city, selling out survival. So how about let's jump into the area that's of some interest. The upper end, the cortical end of the human nervous system. Do you realize that if you think what anybody else thinks, you sold out? You chintzy Philistine crude son of a bitch. I shouldn't even speak to you. You shouldn't even speak to yourself. Don't worry about running across some friend of yours now playing in some cheap cover band in a Holiday Inn. Go look in the mirror. Examine your brain. Listen to yourself talk. Except we've got even now a greater basis of defending ordinary people. Because what do they have to do? Now, nobody would ever do this except you and me. If you ask an ordinary man, all right, this will almost sound like it could happen. I'm tempted to say that may have happened sometime. It's irrelevant. It'd be around the edge of reality in the city. But it ain't right. Instead of my artist and my musician, how about there was a guy that you knew in college or back in your younger days, and you and him used to sit around and talk about the latest book, latest novel, science fiction, the latest drugs, the latest, mainly philosophical chit-chat. They're kind of on the verge, kind of pre-mystical questing, which most of you went through, sitting around and you read some book and you thought, God, that you discovered Buddhism or whatever, and you sit around and you talked about such as that and took it fairly seriously. And you and the other guy threaten to save your money and run off to find a guru or whatever. And you see him 10 years later. For some reason you lose track and you see him. And you could almost be prepared to think that I was going to up the stakes or do it yourself, that you could now, assuming he had now become part of the bourgeoisie, that he is now a suit and tie and fat and 40 and fatigued. But at any rate, that you see him now and you might expect, wait a minute, now if he's become that, he would be worthy. He would be deserving even more of a certain kind of at least metaphorical condemnation or intellectual condemnation than an artist or a musician who, quote, sold out. That is, what if I meet him now, and what if he's, I'm just going to make up, it doesn't matter what, as you know, but what if he is now a real conservative, right-wing, damn near fascist, politically, economically, just a pighead, the kind of guy that you and him used to sit around and thought, God, save me from this, and now you see him, and he was like your soul brother, your intellectual mate. And now you meet him, and you got, God, what happened to you? Had, not he, or anybody else, an ordinary person, that at one time, in their younger times, in their younger days, that had any chance of kind of skating around the edge of polarized thinking, trying to walk that invisible line across that chasm between this and that, and up and down, and et cetera. People can't stay there. They would kill themselves. To survive, you have to begin, if you're ordinary, under almost all conditions, to survive, you have got to sell out. You've got to sell out up here. You've got to finally just give up. Now, I know all these are just terms, and I make them, or when we're using them, they sound almost of a pejorative nature, in the same way that I was making up the examples that you could accuse, if you're ordinary, you could accuse this one-time talented, potentially talented musician of now being, just, how in the hell could you stand? How can you sit there all night and play that shit? How could you sell out like that? How could you squander your talent? Rather than being attacked, look at now back to the intellectual side. An ordinary person, did they not, quote, sell out? Did they not start playing cover tunes in a cheap band? Were they not doing now, just graphic artwork on demand that they walk in and say, listen, we got an account here for Buick, and draw a Buick with a good-looking girl on it and do it quick. And they don't say, and by the way, try to put some sort of, put your own spin on the way she looks, maybe. They're not asking for talent. They want the damn picture. They want the product. The manager at the Holiday Inn, he doesn't want to hear any original material. The band, the audience does not. They're not asking for any creativity. Life, collectively, intellectually, is not asking for any creativity. It'll let you slide when you're a teenager. It'll let you get by for a little while. But now notice how it just all seems to work out. Coincidentally, that just about the same time that the ordinary people could defend themselves, back to my examples, you see your musician buddy, your painter buddy years later, and he goes, hey, I know what you're going to say. You wonder, what in the hell am I doing playing with a Mickey Mouse band like his? Or what am I doing working for an ad agency? I'm telling you the truth. Well, you remember so-and-so, that girl. We had 2 kids. My father died. I had to help my mother. I didn't have any choice. I hate it. I'm sick of it. They say that. No, it's all right. It was sanity. But notice it works out just the same way. They would even say, besides the specifics of their getting some girl pregnant or their mother dying, besides that, they would, if nothing else, they'd just finally say, well, hey, I stuck it out. I fought the good fight. I starved and I painted, or I starved and I sat there with my music all that time. But, Jesus, I'm 35 years old. I had to finally do something. What am I going to do? I'm going to be the world's oldest hippie, the world's oldest bohemian, which people name bohemians anymore. That's how far behind that is. I don't know, it's about time for that to come back. At any rate, they would have to say, just on the basis of survival, just because of my age. It got to be silly. I can't walk around here and be a 40-year-old guy wearing sandals and long hair and saying, well, any day now I'm going to be discovered. Somebody's going to come by and hear me playing up there, up in my little attic room up there with my... And somebody will be coming by and go, what ho? And they'll discover me and give me a record contract and I'll be famous. Yeah, I used to believe that, but Jesus, I'm 35, I'm hungry. I'm tired of driving a 49 Edsel. 57 Edsel then. 49 Rambler. A Kaiser, an Allstate. But what I was going to say is, notice coincidentally how that works out. The reason we took that side step was I said life will let you slide as a teenager. As you can. It lets you slide in all sorts of ways, remember. That's one thing of the younger generation is you even have some sort of plans. Whereas once you do sell out, once you do settle down and become sane, the idea of plans is a dream. It is an illusion. It is damage control. It is holding patterns passing for takeoff. It is damage control, rear guard action passing for planning. And all you got to do is look at yourself. It's not some theory I made up. Once you do settle down, of course, in conversation, if you accuse somebody and say, boy, if you could say, hey, I heard some guy say that once you get matured and your brain sort of atrophies and you sell out, that you no longer plan, that is the sole purview of the young generation compared to you, the younger. And somebody could legitimately, an ordinary person, go, that's not true. I've got plans. I'm 40, but we're trying to buy a summer house. The wife and I, we're trying to buy a house up the lake. We're trying to trade in the Jag and get a new Jag, get a BMW. They can say that, but think about it. They're all forms. This is tricky, but you ought to be able to see it, not for me to prove the point. They're all forms of damage control. It's not plans. What plans does that have to do with their own creativity? None. It's a kind of damage plan like, well, we're planning. We want a summer house. What does that represent to ordinary people? Nothing wrong with summer house. I mean, if any of you got an extra one you don't give away, I know some people take it. Some people are real close to me. But what I want you to see is that's not the point. But an ordinary person, back to possessions and wealth, but the whole thing that has nothing to do with them creatively, internally, all of that is damage control. In the sense that, all right, I've sold out. I'm already dead. I just won't lay down. I'm here and I'm waiting my turn. But Jesus, I'm 40 years old. I'm outlive according to the insurance table. God, I might live another 25 or 30 years. What the hell am I going to do? How will I stand? Hey, won't we go in debt more? Won't we trade cars? Won't we buy a summer home? It is damage control in a sense to make up for the fact that, well, here we are, and my internal creative juices are spent. Some way I sort of died, or I'm drying up to almost a terminal degree internally. So how can I survive the rest of these years? And like everybody else, the selling out, you have to continue to look at whatever the collective's doing. Or put it crudely, plainly, is you have to look to the world of possessions, as you know. Nothing wrong with it, but it's not the same thing as being intellectually alive, being neurally alive. So they have to sell out. But notice the selling out intellectually is literally a form of adult sanity. You find somebody, back to my picture that I made up, the conversation I put in the artist that I made up, that you see him and now he's 40 years old and he says, hey, I had to give it up. I hate it. I hate the job. I used to love the life, but I suddenly turn around. I'm 40 years old and I can't wander around doing childish things. I cannot wander the rest of my life barefoot, no money, no car, living off women. I can't do that all my life. What are they also saying? If you saw somebody, let's put it this way, which does happen, just because I say that this guy said he couldn't do it, you do know. You can walk out here on the street. It wouldn't be that hard. Every city's got their form of Soho or somewhere that you go, and there will be 40 and 50-year-old guys hanging around a coffee shop or a bar looking like they were 17, whatever age you were, that you say, well, hey, that's how I was when I was 17. And look at it, those guys 50 years old, living in their car, sponging off women, still sitting around amongst themselves saying, yeah, any day now, I hear Atlantic's going to send down a guy to listen to me next week. He's like, you're dreaming. You're worse than dreaming. You're deranged. You're nuts. because that is the feel. And it's not commenting on whether the people involved have any talent, but just ordinary people going by the rest of the collective herd. If they pay any attention to them at all, they just dismiss them because they know, you guys are strays. You're crippled. You're an anachronism. Shape up. You're 50 years old or 40 years old. Die. Straighten up. Get a job. Sell out is the point. But sell out is not a pejorative. At the ordinary level, it is not a pejorative activity. It is sanity. Tied to it, since some of you seem to get some reaction, with two more that we're here together. There's a term here. 1, 2, 3, 4. The downhill sled ride of aging. That's the whole term. By the way, copyright. Can't. Don't need people trying to sample my material. The downhill sled ride of aging. Didn't I? Actually affords two possibilities. I could say. All right. And at least one of them is grossly overlooked. But the natural downhill sled ride of aging actually offers two possibilities. One is the dulling of the survival runner. That is the natural one. You do not have to exert any effort to do that. Nature takes care of that, as ordinary people call it. That is the downhill sled ride. All you got to do is just, you know what runners are on a sled. You got two sides. Well, one of the possibilities is it is the dulling of the survival runner. Put it to you crudely. You're dying. You're getting old. You're falling apart. So there you go. The other is the sharpening of the entertaining creative one. Or, if you want me to rewrite it here, I assume you get the point. One of the possibilities is the dulling of the survival, the dulling of the physical runner. The other possibility, the one that is not normally considered, would be the sharpening of the neural one, which is running in contradistinction to what is supposed to be the normal. We're talking about the normal downhill sled ride. With ordinary people, even though they can naysay it verbally, part of selling out, part of finally selling out, part of it is sort of a relief. All of you should know. Well, you meet a guy that you hadn't seen. One of my guys again, and you say, what happened to you and your art, you and your music, you and your writing? He goes, well, I'm going to tell you the truth. I am now selling insurance. Well, you don't know. You remember that girl I was with? All right, she got pregnant. And then next thing I know, I had 2 kids. No, I'm in debt. And it sounds, you go, oh, and he goes, I know, but the truth is, and some of you's been through it, at the time I'm sure you didn't know it, but you should be able to now. And those of you that would deny that you've been through it, you should now recognize at least after the fact in others, there is a certain kind of relief for people. I mean, they can bitch and go, well, shit, I'm gonna have to quit playing music. The guy tells the other guys in the band, he says, she's pregnant. And I don't know. I just can't get out of this one. I don't know. I'm getting tired of this. I'm tired of being on the road, and I won't keep playing. But Jesus, I mean, here she is. We're gonna have the kid in 2 weeks. She got no family. I can't just leave her. I like her. It's not like just, I don't know. I know I've left them before, but guys, you're gonna have to get somebody else. And it sounds pitiful, in a sense. Or it sounds like, well, what a shame. He had real talent. There's also in that a kind of on his part. It's like, well, circumstance is right in my control. I've got to sell out. Thank God. Because then the rest of his life, even should he run across you 10 years later or somebody else, and they go, Bobby, is that you? Is that you in a suit? Is that you driving that car out there that said Allstate Insurance? What happened to your music? What happened to your writing? He is actually relieved that I thought some of you do get it. And it has nothing to do with art, creativity, selling insurance, possessions, or money. It is that once you are no longer part, that one of your physical runners, that you're no longer part of the younger generation, and you're dying, that the hormones running out, and hence the creative juices running out, that it's natural. It's now, all right, Jesus, I'm sold out. And you can bitch about it periodically. That's part of why men, up until now, the historic thing is one reason about them going out and drinking, because they can get in how if you drink amongst themselves, say, God damn, boy, I wish I wasn't married. No. Jesus, how did I get in? Why am I doing in this condition? Well, I got to go. I'll be late. She'll be, little one will be mad. And they can make faces, men at each other. That's like, fighting imaginary dragons that men do, like, well, as long as she's not around, I can say, God, boy, I hate being married. It is not just marriage. It's not marriage. It is what I'm talking about. It is the selling out. Many people, all right, how about this? We'll make it a little more complicated, although we're not surrounded here by real old people. All of you should be feeling it. How people whine and complain about getting old. You can just hear them staying around. They don't have to be that old. So I say, God, it's hell getting old. I'm going to have to buy glasses, or, my hair's getting thin, or, I don't know. I used to run 10 miles a day, and now 3 or 4. Whatever it is, they say, boy, it's hell. Is it? With ordinary people? Is it? I could pick those examples apart. If you think it's hell having to go from running 10 miles a day to 5, it just shows that you hadn't run enough. Because in a sense, it is a release to think, Jesus, my knees are bothering me so bad, I may have to cut down on running. And then when nobody's looking, you think, boy, isn't this horrible? That kind of thing. And, all right, now in the same sense, since you got that is really in the same kind of sense of a guy. And I'm not denying that there are people that it's got nothing to do with how interested the person was in some creative area that they were pursuing, like music or art or writing. The great fun of it, but it's like being drug out and they're past the time of creativity and dreams and hormonally based activity at the ordinary level. And they keep pushing it is what turns them into a 50-year-old hippie outside the mainstream. But if they do not fall into that, it is a kind of relief of I can't run anymore. Or I've got to cut back. Oh, isn't that horrible? And everybody around goes, yeah, it is. Boy, I bet you miss running 10 miles a day. And he goes, yes, I do, until they turn their head and you go, at least metaphorically. In the same sense of people saying, you mean you just had to give up music completely? Well, yeah, since last time I saw you, she got pregnant. I got in debt. And God, that's horrible. You were so good. He said, I know, I loved it. I miss music. It breaks my heart sometimes. But in a sense, the guy, now I don't mean he literally does it, of course, because some of you know literally it's not true, but in a sense, his nervous system, when he says, I hate it, that was more fun, being on the road, girls everywhere, He's talking about when he was 18, 19, 20, and now here he is 30, and you're talking to him, and he says, God, I miss it. And you turn your head and you go, not really, of course. But collectively, that is the downhill sled ride. And it's also, I didn't pull it out, but I said, you can bank on this for sure. Philistines are supposed to be running things. That's one of the old stories. Also, if we want to jump metaphors in mid-Holiday Inn, it's this kind of great eternal struggle also between the young terrorists, the young Turks out in the street, the young rebels, artistically and otherwise, even politically, and the establishment. That's one of the oldest stories in the world. And what is that? It is actually a representation of what I'm talking about, the nervous system. It's not political. That's just a crude form. It's not artistic, which is just another crude form. But it's always the artist at a young age, the younger generation. They're the ones that turn around, and they're the ones who would say, we are being ruled by Philistines. I mean, look at them. They got no talent. They got no interest in any creative aspect of life. All they're trying to do is hold on to a little grubby power, keep their jobs, keep us downtrodden, keep us hungry, poor, keep us politically impotent. What we need is more people like us. Now, when I'm saying us, now we're talking about 18, 19-year-old guys painting revolutionary posters, printing up little things on private presses that what amounts to is whatever the powers that be going, fuck them. I'm sorry. I promised them I wouldn't do that. It is the eternal struggle, it appears to be, between the rebels, the artists, and the establishment, the Philistines. But what I was pointing out to you, which you should know, but the Philistines are supposed to be running it, as opposed to artists. And the punchline, or the second line of the item was, believe me, it's better that way. That is a certain kind of dramatic sarcasm, just between you and me. Better that way. Shit, if the artist got in charge, forget about nuclear night, what was it, nuclear winter time, or us destroying ourselves, or a comet hitting us, we wouldn't have time. You can't let artists be in charge. You can't let the artists get in charge. It's supposed to be fat suits and ties running the world. Always. That's the whole point. But it's also the whole point is why the artist, why anybody trying to be creative, now we're talking about just ordinary level now, just stuff like music, art, just stuff that's meaningless. That's why they feel the need is they're pushing the next generation. There's the nervous system in man collectively. But it's only a few. Remember there was another one, I don't guess I pulled out, that said that it was a history of man collectively and individually, is that in man collectively, the nervous system grows. In man. But in few men do they make their own nervous system grow. That's the difference. That's what you've got to, that's the one that has to do with the other runner on the sled. Because it's a cheap dream. If you understand, it's like ordinary people taking the easiest, it's the only way they can take out, is taking these two runners, and they begin to die, they get older. Just get 21, 25, get married, sell out. What do they start doing? They could have been the most hedonistic vice president of the local atheist club, painting anti-clerical posters and all that, and they sell out. A few years, you find them back in church, back at the temple, worrying about immortality. As soon as they realize, wait a minute, I'm dying. I'm 40 years old. My father was dead of a heart attack at 41. God almighty. Let me back in the church. Let me go back and talk to a priest or something. You understand? Taking the way that's impossible. In other words, they're trying to rejuvenate themselves physically, that runner. That's the easy way. That's always the easy way is, well, what do you want to do? What should we do in life? Well, I tell you what, let's attempt the impossible. Good idea. That's what the ordinary always do. It is a moot act, but normally if you attempt a moot act, or even if you just dream about an irrelevant, impertinent, impossible act, notice this, you cannot be disappointed. Well, because you can't get started. You can say, wait a minute, by God, I am a firm believer in Christianity or whatever. And I believe that by living a good life and contributing some money over here to the church and that sort of whatever it is, that after I die, by God, I'll come back to life and I'll live forever and I'll never be sick like I am now. Yeah. That's wonderful. That's that kind of thing. That's undertaking a moot act. Nobody can disprove it. You can't be disappointed because it can't be done. You just say, well, that's what I believe. Don't I, Rabbi? And he goes, yes, yes. He says, that's what I believe, all right. You can't be hurt. You can't lose because you can't get going. You're dying and that runner is running down. That one in there, if you remember, if you didn't see the connection, was, or maybe it was last time, a guy and his wife renamed their summer home. It was last time. That their summer home, they renamed it the rejuvenation of the mind even as the body is running down. That was their summer home. Because that's all you can do. Now, you can take out the hobby of trying to stay in shape and run. That's all right. But if you think that by running, I don't know. Maybe I just made up a new one. Maybe if you keep running more every year, maybe that's immortality. That you start off at 40 and you run 1 mile, and then at 45 you run 5. Maybe that's it. Right. Count on it. At any rate, since there's nothing you can do to prolong life, since there is no such thing as immortality that you're going to go, that's what people, ordinary people, that's all that they can focus on. because they've already sold out. They already became civilized. They already got normal. In other words, they have already intellectually died or creatively died, neurally died. The few, when I said that collectively, the nervous system grows in man. That is the continual evolution of man collectively. But individually, who evolves? Contraire, Pierre. You look around and take my stories, since everyone recognizes already. Individually, that's one lifetime. You look around, even the people, if you're ordinary, I'm just speaking now generically, even those that you knew at one time in your younger days when you were all young rebels and Turks, those who are great writers, great would-be philosophers, musicians, the creative ones, where are they now? They dead. Oh, they may be alive, but they dead. They got suits and ties. They sold out, or else they're insane. It's a simple choice. They either sold out and work for Allstate or a bank, or they're nuts. Well, of course, there's the third possibility. They could be here, but look how few we are. So the chances are they're in one of the other two groups, trust me. Man collectively evolves. But in one lifetime, what I was going to say is you look around and nobody evolves. That's why I put it the way that few. Because what you're doing would appear to be, to the collective, irrelevant. Oh, I guess philosophically or theoretically I could make them say, well, maybe that's some interest. But once they sell out, once they become ordinary, you only got two possible runners. You're going downhill. You suddenly sold out, you're normal. You're just an ordinary person. You're what your mother and father were. What you dreaded you'd be, now you're it. And you're faced with one thing. I'm friggin' dying. What can I do? But see what you don't realize. But see, it happens that people begin to be concerned that I'm dying physically, that I'm getting sick, and that becomes the great hobby to most people nowadays, especially they've got more free time. Where's my, I got to check my blood pressure. How am I doing? Let me take my own temperature. I slept in a good one tonight. It was a gift. It was somebody's birthday, so I slept in a good one. I'm not sure anybody heard it, but it was about a boy and his father were down at the musing pond on a warm afternoon, and the kid said, what would happen if a knight actually completed the quest? If somebody actually brought themselves back to life neurally, what if somebody actually knew what was going on? And he said, well, I'm doing the father. He said, well, he says, I guess after that he would either become a health nut or a world-class hypochondriac. That was a good old man. Because that's but what do ordinary people do? What's the hobby now? Pick up any magazine, newspaper, news program on television. I mean, health is one of the big hobbies. Great business, but it's a great hobby now. Why? Because once you grow up and you're normal, you have died here, and men know it, in that kind of sense. That is, they give up. They sell out. They become sane. They settle down. I am now the older generation. I am now the generation that was ahead of me. I got to put those childish things behind me. This is what I am. Where was that? Martha, didn't they have that blood testing thing on sale down at the drugstore? Or where's the thermometer? Come on, look at my eye. Is my hair getting thinner? Feel my heart. Let me count my... Which is meaningless. You're going to die. But since you've already died here, what's left is the point. There's no way to attack ordinary people. They would go, well, health is important. And you have to say, well, I know it is. Because you only got two possible healths. That's your neural health, your creative, your intellectual health, and your physical health. Okay? So here you are, 21, you're grown. Your mental health, the good thing about mentally dying is it doesn't decompose to where you smell bad. Or else that'd be one of the sure ways to identify an area that was really civilized. Everybody would be like... So you're grown and you know that you've died here. So what's left? Then you got to start worrying about, wait a minute, what can I do about physically dying? And of course nothing, but you can apparently check on it. You can sort of monitor it like, well, you can do that. But intellectually, what do people do? They don't know what to do. It's why some of them will listen to such as this for a little bit and they go, God, and their head begins to hurt and they want to wander out like, well what is this? It's disturbing. They don't know why. Or they go, this is kind of controversial. And if you say, how so? And they go, well, I don't know, but I just think it is. What's controversial? I don't know. I heard somebody say it was. Since some of you liked, I was going to finish up and read the two together. Well, one that we didn't get to is in the bio-survival world, nothing is prohibited. That is, to survive at the uncivilized level, nothing is prohibited. You would do what it took to survive, you and your own family, your immediate kin. But you would do personally what it took to survive. Because if you're sane, and we're in the bio-survival level, if we're not civilized, then you would not even be uncivilizedly sane. If you were starving, the guy next to you was starving, if you didn't kill him and take his food. In the bio-survival world, nothing is prohibited, while in the neural post-survival, everything is permitted. Another view of why Philistines hate art and life. That is, why the Philistines, why grown people despise art. Well, let me get the rest of the sentence. Don't you know, but I'm not getting hung up because ordinary art's meaningless, but they still despise it. Who's the first things the king will clamp down on? Remember the king out here, if we want to talk about tyrants and despots politically, or the king in here? Take your choice according to how fast you are. But out here, what's the one thing a tyrant will not put up for? Stalin will let somebody, or Mussolini got there, maybe march in the street, or, one thing they will not stand is art. They will not stand art that in any way becomes critical. And they don't even like art unless the state controls it, because they know, without knowing why, they know that anything creative is running in conflict with me. And if you let artists go, if you just give them just an inch, you watch it. Next week, they'll be painting funny photographs of me, make me look like some kind of horse's ass. I know what'll happen, and they're right. That's why the Philistines hate art and life. It's getting real metaphysical here at the end, but that is creative life. That's why the older generation always tells everybody younger, grow up, damn it, calm down, get a job, go get a girl pregnant so you got to settle down, go to college. But now forget Mussolini and outside despots and your father. It's your brain telling you, it's your neural system going, sell out. Calm down. Get some brains. Why are you going to wander around like some kind of 19-year-old horny, deranged teenager on pot the rest of your life? Straighten up. And you think, well, you're right. The downhill sled ride of aging actually affords two possibilities. One is the dulling of the survival runner. The other, the sharpening of the entertaining, creative neural one. Lastly, the older you get, the smarter you have to get. Or else you just get older.